Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 423. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the internationally celebrated and award-winning author and CEO of Cosby Media Productions and Star Child Comics, Braxton Cosby.
Braxton. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. So I know we were talking before we went on the show that we have a mutual person in common, Jeffrey Haas or Haas. Mm-hmm. You know, I see his name. I know exactly how it's spelled, but it's interesting when you first meet somebody through actually the written word, and then you meet them in person. They actually pronounce their last name. You're like, that is not how I thought it was going to be.
Right, that is not what I was going
with. And so, yeah, you're in Atlanta now, right?
Yeah, a new mecca for entertainment. You know, they've got a lot going on in the Hollywood scene. Also, the indie scene has really picked up. I've been in this business as far as publishing since 2010, roughly. We kind of really got the ball rolling in 2014. So I say we kind of celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year. So because of that, and because I really have I'm a stickler for doing what they say the industry standard. At first, I had a partnership with a larger publisher at one point. And so everything was really like about formatting and editing and all that stuff and trying to make products that were quote unquote industry standards. So because I stuck to that and I still hold that true today, I consider us a small press publisher. We're not the big five. We're not the intermediate, but we're still small press. So I would say in the comic industry, we're probably a little more independent because we have our own comic imprint, Star Child Comics, under the Cosby Media Productions banner. So we're small press, and we love it, and we love being independent and being able to do what we want to do with our books and our comics. And our authors are just so amazing. They come up with fantastic ideas, and I always challenge them to just give me the next big thing and to push the envelope. So they've done a great job, and we just continue to just tell great stories, I feel.
Right. And so, because you're here to talk a little bit about your series, which is it's the Young Hellions series. Is that
right? Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So, can you tell us about the genesis of the Young Hellions series and what inspired you to write Broken?
Well, my first, I've been writing since 2010. I've got my 20th novel under my belt, wow. And I like to write a lot in third person, and I would say that my wheelhouse is fiction. But this time around, I hadn't really established a story for, per se, a young female, a protagonist. And so I'm a father of 3 girls, and I wanted to kind of highlight them. So I took a lot of bit of their personalities and kind of wove them into the character who's the main protagonist of the story, named Kisa. And I basically took that young 16-year-old girl and stuck her in the middle of an all-out war, post-apocalyptic landscape where everybody so-called pushes the button, and you have all this nuclear fallout. Nobody knows who started it, but they just know it did end in all-out nuclear war. 70% of the population, plant, animal, and human, have been destroyed. And in order to salvage some degree of life afterwards, people have migrated to the coastlines for fresh water and tried to reestablish some form of life. But as you can imagine, with everything being decimated, money no longer has any value. So the tagline is like, in the post-apocalyptic world, the only real value now is a human currency. So people have enacted slave trade again. This one corporation called the Establishment basically just trades human beings, and that has nothing to do with race or creed or color. It's really about a class system. If you don't have, then you will be traded. And so that's what they use for currency. The Establishment is worldwide, and they have set up these precincts that they have judges and magistrates reign over. And in these settlements that are along the coast, they have slave pods where they kind of keep people separated by age. And so Kisa is in the teenage pod, and she has been separated from her mother and father, and she is now the surrogate parent of her younger brother, Kieran, who's 11 years old, and she basically just has to look after him. They all have jobs, so Kisa is what they call a scout, so she climbs a tree every day, and she overlooks the wasteland where a lot goes on. Those people who have ingested the ashes of the fallout, one of three things can happen to you. One, you can become a mindless zombie, and we call those ashers. But they do move in a hive mind, a little bit different than some you see on like Walking Dead. They run fast. They move as a hive in one unit with a leader. You could also become a kind of a madman. We call them hoarders, where they just kind of pillage the land for resources, destroy people on sight, or 1% of the population has special abilities unlocked with like ESP and things like that, and those folks are called alphas. Okay. So as we go through the story, we start to get hints that Kisa may be indeed one of these alphas. So it's a little bit of a fantasy post-apocalyptic story. It's gotten some really good reviews. The copy that you're showing right there is actually the third book. And people say, well, how's it the third book? It's a comic. Well, it's the second issue comic. And that makes it the third book. What I wanted to do with Broken, and really what we've been doing with Cosby Media Production as the publisher and Star Child Comics as the comic imprint, is we call ourselves a hybrid publisher. We start our stories in novels and we continue them in comics, or we start them in comics, we continue them in novels. We kind of go back and forth, and we give people a nice variance of storytelling. So they might get more of the visual stuff in the comic, and they might get the foundational stuff in the novel. And we've done that with quite a few series. So Broken, just recently released, is the third book, the graphic novel that you have there. It's over 60 pages. Book 2 was the comic book, which was 24 pages. And book 1 was the novel, which was over 350 pages.
So my next question for you then is, like, how does Broken reflect, say, like, you know, your views on society and the directions it could be potentially heading towards?
Well, I think, you know, we are kind of scarily getting there right now, where I just feel like, you know, there's, you know, greed is never satisfied. And I think that that's really where this went to. You know, there's a bigger plot underlying in the background that I have in this story. And it continues to just open up more and more. It's not just about trying to survive, but there is this conglomerate corporation has kind of set these wheels in motion to basically just decimate the planet and live amongst the ashes, and people just try to survive. They're going to continue to crush you and just have more. So I think we're getting there. We're getting to the point where the people who have all the resources don't have enough, and they don't even mind destroying those who don't have. I'm all for going out and getting what you want. It's your portion. It's your hard work. That's fine. But I don't have to crush people in the same tone to try to get what I want. If you have everything, why crush anybody else? It means absolutely nothing. You can't even spend the majority of the money that you have already, even in one lifetime. So why destroy me for trying to have a piece of the pie too? So I think overall with this storyline, as I continue to open it up in more stories, we start to see that there is a menacing evil that is in the background. And really, this has nothing to do with war, but it really comes down to just, you know, destroying mankind itself and just trying to capitalize off of picking up the pieces and people being, their lives just being snatched from them. And that's really what Kisa is going through. There's a lot about mental health in here, because you can imagine a 16-year-old girl just wants to be going to her prom and being a junior in high school and dating boys. And she does not want to have to try to figure out how to survive in this zombie apocalypse. And so she has had trouble trying to put the pieces together, being snatched from her family and separated, and now being, you know, kind of not told, but forced to be a parent when she is not even thinking about things like that. So I felt like it was a tribute to my own daughters, because I know they go through quite a bit in this society with social media being so crazy and making you feel as if you need to be a certain kind of person to be popular or survive. And, you know, as adults, of course, we understand that stuff doesn't mean anything, but you can't tell a teenager that. So right. I've tried to be sensitive to the way I tell the story so that it does fit in the box that young folks can understand, but also having those bigger, heavier tones about, love, sacrifice, and survival, and really perseverance in this story.
Can you discuss any research that you undertook to build the post-apocalyptic world?
Yeah, I did. And I haven't really opened this up yet, so you'll be the first. There is a bit of research that I did about how the planet would survive following nuclear fallout, and you really do realize that it doesn't take much for the whole world to be destroyed. Because I mean, honestly, with the fallout plumes, as they basically go into the sky, they block the sky out, and we'd really be looking at a world freeze. So everything would just become frozen at temperatures that people really couldn't survive in. And they would have to seek shelter, and they wouldn't, and basically all the plants would die out, and the animals would have nothing to eat. So then, we would lose the food that we have, and if they become, poisoned by the nuclear fallout, then you couldn't eat them anyway. So you really would, mankind really wouldn't have a long window of survival after that. So when we get into Broken, it's like, okay, well, how are they surviving? Well, basically, that is the truth as we continue to tell the story. Is that, hey, if this was nuclear fallout and people are still alive, then there is a bigger plot here, because there was only so many of the nuclear warheads that were destroyed to only take out a certain percentage and allowing life to go on. So now you start to get a aha moment of, yeah, there are people behind this, So yeah, that is the research that I did, just to make sure I was staying accurate with how I tell the story, so that it's something that is realistic and seems very plausible.
So what message do you hope readers take away from Kisa's journey?
I think at the base of it is really just like learning tolerance of everybody's differences. She meets so many other teenagers in the pods, and she's had to learn how to survive with them. Cooperation. She meets people out in the wastelands, and there's this rumblings of the resistance that's forming, and now she's got to trust these people who she's never met before. So there's now becoming this surrogate family that she's taking on, and learning how to trust them and live with them and kind of move as one to a very to a similar goal. So obviously it's more than just survival at this point. It's about righting the wrongs of what has happened to everybody. So I think we'll get that. We'll get a sense of some endearing relationships that she builds, some lost, some reestablished over time. And then there's just a real cool, zombies are fantastic. It's great storytelling. And I make them as authentic as I can, so that they're a little bit different in the way that they're operating. So there's this nice fantastical piece of storytelling with this nice blend of science and fantasy that happens in Broken, that I think people will appreciate as well. And we do have some really nice action sequences too, which is why I was excited to get into the comic, because the novel really deep dives into the background of the establishment and how they're run, and the antagonists who are behind it, who have a really vested interest in trying to keep Kisa in line and even recruit her to some extent. So I really dive into that. We kind of hint at the Hoarders and the Ashers in the first book. So the second book gave me an opportunity to really kind of go into some great action sequences and a little bit more history on the Ashers and how they move. And in the third book, which is the graphic novel, I was able to expand on Kisa's character. I really wanted to make the landscape and the world of Broken, we call them the Badlands, really the focus, so that we can kind of put that on display. We introduced some new variant of some of the characters in the story as well, who've been affected by the nuclear fallout as well. So it's just something that I just start off at a foundation of maybe just introducing the world and some of the things of one of the factions with the establishment, and a little bit of the Hoarders, because there's a moment where Keisha is exposed more to them, and then now we can just pick up the action and the pieces and really kind of show you this world living and breathing in the comic book, because obviously you can't really capture that in the novel as your world building. So I think people just appreciate being able to really see some of the action pieces and the big sets that I was able to write. And the artwork is done by the same artist in books 2 and 3, which is Ram Silva. He's an amazing artist down in Brazil. And Julio Caballero is my colorist and letterer, and he just does an amazing job at really bringing these pages to life in some brilliant colors and some palettes. I was so excited about the imagery that we were able to capture in Broken.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. You talked about it a little bit already, but how do you balance action and character development in the story?
I think once you've developed those characters, I like to think of characterization as I'm going to give you the pieces of like the skeleton of the character, and then I'm going to hammer that over and over again in instances where they're put into situations, and then if the reader or the audience has really been connected with that character, they can almost anticipate how that character is going to respond. For example, I tell this all the time, when you're looking at your favorite movie and your character, your hero comes up and, there's a sequence where they're, interacting with the antagonist, you assume, or you're kind of expecting like, oh man, this is going to be it. I can't believe they tried so-and-so. Maybe like in the Avengers where Avengers Part 1, where Captain America's at the end and he's kind of issuing out orders where you do this and you do this and you do this. And then he looks at the Hulk and he's like, Hulk, smash. And, all the audiences know who the Hulk is and they're excited because they know what smash means, so you can anticipate he's about to go wild and just start destroying everything. And that's what I try to do with my character. I try to set them up in their personality so much that by the time I put them in these instances, you can almost anticipate, it's like taking that big bull and running it through a china shop. There's something going to happen. A bull cannot be dainty like a cat, so there's going to be some broken pieces. And so I try to just build that so when we get to the action pieces, you're excited to see how it all unfolds because I've been building it up to that point.
Well, then my next question then is, did your characters go in a direction that completely was unexpected even to you?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it's kind of crazy when you're a writer, and I'm not sure if this happens to everybody, but I know for sure it does with me, is that I write stories and as I'm doing dialogue, the characters start trying to kind of chiming in and they kind of take my scenes to another level, like I have these interactions happen. I'm like, oh man, like, oh, that's how they would think. And then so we start having these conversations and the character is delivering the lines. And all I'm doing is just putting it, on the paper through the computer and my keyboard. And then when I get done writing, it's like it's something that was just foreign to me. But again, I'm following the characterization that I've already built. So these characters will interact with each other. And when you put them together, then they all have to kind of play off of each other based on their personalities, So yeah, so sometimes my characters have taken me certain levels. And again, even with Kisa, when I was writing her initially, I didn't really have an appreciation for all that would happen to her as a young girl in this world. But as I wrote it and I kept writing it over and over again, I saw this development of her character kind of cracking and breaking, So Broken is kind of like a dichotomy of sorts where it's the character of Kisa is now broken because of things that have happened. And of course, the world around her is as well. So it was a challenge to kind of write her in a way to keep her fearless and aggressive to survive, but at the same time be very vulnerable and shaky and have these moments where she is breaking down and she doesn't think she can make it. And she's even considering suicide. And if it wasn't for her being anchored to humanity through her little brother and still wanting to be a part of this world just for him, Kisa probably would have been gone by now, So in the third book, I was able to explore her psyche a little bit more and have the people around her who have come to love her and know her really kind of have this come to Jesus moment and like shake her back to truths of saying, hey, listen, you're not well. This is not the world we live in that you're considering, and we've got to do something about it.
So as a prolific writer across different genres, how does writing dystopian fiction compare to your other works then?
Yeah, so I've really kind of have really invested myself into writing science fiction. I love science fiction. It's my favorite form of writing. my favorite form of storytelling. If there's a science fiction show that's coming on, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to try the first 3 episodes. If it's terrible, I'll just, tap out. But that's really what I enjoy the most. And that's what I've been writing. So I feel like that's my wheelhouse. So fantasy and dystopian fiction was a little new for me, in that there's different rules in writing different genres, And so I had to kind of learn the rules, but it wasn't completely foreign to me, because one of my favorite stories growing up as a child was Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. So what happens if things are turned on its head and the world is totally different than the way we anticipate it being? And that's really kind of the rules that I was writing in, is we have the world one way, and when it's turned upside down, how do the characters respond then? And then now you've got these zombies and you got this wasteland, and I'm a video gamer too, so a big inspiration to me was like Fallout, the Fallout series as well. I took a lot of ideas from that about how the radiation gets into the food sources and how the people actually have to clean it and things like that. So, and we even find out in this story that the hoarders aren't as mindless as we think initially, because they do have certain systems where they have learned how to survive as well and filtrate the water and keep things clean so that they can survive. So
you kind of mentioned Ray Bradbury. What other books, what other inspirations do you have, Braxton?
Yeah. I love Octavia Butler, The Parable of the Sower and things like that. So the ones that her stories are fantastic. I'm my sci-fi writer of choice, and this comes from a time period back, is Fred Saberhagen. He wrote the Berserker series, so I still like a lot of his stuff. Of course, if you go into fantasy, Tolkien with Lord of the Rings is one of my favorites as well. But if you go into young adult stories, which I wrote as well with Star-Crossed Saga, I did like Veronica Roth with the Divergent series, and Marie Lu with the Legend series. So, those guys I take a little piece of in my storytelling and try to find the tone in which I want to write. So I definitely have to pay homage to those successful authors as well that have done an amazing job with writing.
So this is, as you say, you've taken this and you've taken your long prose book and turning it into a graphic novel. Is the Young Hellions, is this a ongoing series, or is it a finite series of books?
Oh no, this is ongoing. Like I said, book 1 is and book 1 was the novel. Book 2 picked up right after right at the end of the cliffhanger ending in book 1. The comic book picks up right after that. And then book 3, probably about a 6-week period after the events that happened in book 2. And so now when book 3 ends, we're already working on the next type of book that it's going to have is a novella. So the novella will be the next phase of storytelling in the series, which will be book 4 for the Broken series.
So Braxton, if our viewers or listeners want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place they could go to?
They go right where you are right now. And it's www.cosbymediaproductions with an S.com. There they'll be able to read up on all the things about our wonderful authors. We've published over 30 authors with 60 titles in ebook, paperback, and audiobook formats. We've got a little bit of everything. We've got young adult, we've got new adult, we've got poetry, we've got inspirational stories, and we also have our comic books. So they'll be able to go over to our storefront and purchase any one of the comics on site. If they go and they peruse the novels and the offerings that we have, they'll also have links that can take them to Amazon if they want to purchase, the audiobook or the ebook or the paperback from there as well. And, we just want you to come hang out with us. We also have links to our social media, Cosby Media Productions on Instagram and Facebook, and Starchild _comics on IG, and Starchild Comics on Facebook as well.
Well, thank you so much, Braxton. And when you have new books coming out, you should come back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm already working on another one already. This year is a convention season for me, so I'll be taking Broken, the entire series of that with me. I also have I just dropped my second issue for my comic book, the Cape series, which is part of a 4-book novel series as well. You got 2 comics and 4 novels. and Still Rain, which is a duology with the Pre-Flight is the comic book, which kind of sets things in motion for the novel that comes after it. So just continuing to move forward with more stories and just enjoying the ride and just being able to share some of these tales that are in my head. And if people enjoy it, man, I'll just keep doing it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Braxton.
Thank you for having me. You have a good night.
Now, so how does this is the best part about this, Braxton, the fact that I'm actually I can just edit out all my ums and make it sound like I'm like super right on top of it. That's what I love about it.
That's fine.